Hello everyone, great to have you here for this edition of MeteoMark's Weather. Welcome to the channel. We're going to be watching Hurricane Erin re-strengthen back to a Category 4 hurricane. How close will it come to the US East Coast and Bermuda? We'll get into that. But most importantly, we're going to be watching another area with a Cape Verde wave behind it over the next several days. This could actually either impact parts of the Caribbean, Gulf, or US East Coast. Through the end of the month, could we see a landfalling hurricane? Let's get into it. And look at the visible satellite view of Erin here. This is crazy. This is a beautiful shot of Erin right to the north of Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic, east of the Turks and Caicos. An infrared satellite view of Hurricane Erin, really showing the deep convection here. It is starting to wrap back around here on the north side of it. You can see that's where the heaviest convection is. Here's the Turks, Caicos, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico. And all of that deep convection right around the center of circulation. If we go right around, you can see the three-dimensional view of Hurricane Erin. It is going to be re-strengthening here shortly back to a Category 4 hurricane. In our infrared satellite here by the Cape Verde region, we're going to watch some serious tropical waves here. This will likely spin up out of this area as our next potential tropical storm. All right, so starting off here with the model runs of the tropics here of the Atlantic. We're going to start off with Hurricane Erin, and then our next potential system behind it, GFS European model. I'll show you all of what we could be looking at here for the solution. So here's Erin. That is our first order of business. And out here, we're watching these tropical waves. Let me just zoom out momentarily here. I'll show you right across parts of the Cape Verde area, watching two strong tropical waves, and then inland here into Central Africa. This is where the intertropical convergence zone is going crazy. So if we just back this up a little bit, stretching throughout the rest of your Sunday, you're going to see those outer feeder bands in parts of Puerto Rico here, Dominican Republic, Turks and Caicos of the Bahamas. This is going to be a really close call for you, ominously just passing off to the east of you, re-strengthening back into a Category 4, and we'll go over that intensity scale in several minutes from now later in the video. But watch this, the 18th, we're starting to see this activity out here in the Cape Verde season area organize. And that's probably going to be our next tropical storm as we go later on in the week into next weekend. This run of the GFS passing Erin safely between Bermuda and North Carolina, and I'm pretty much in agreement with that. You're still going to see some major riptide action, wave action. These stiff northeast winds, especially in North Carolina, the Outer Banks, is going to pile the water up. Outer bands could reach you, though, so you might see some gusty showers and thunder showers with this. But this is going to start really recurving. Bermuda, you may see some eastern bands as well and major wave action. The big question is this going to cleanly escape and leave Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, and Prince Edward Island unscathed up here? So that's the big question. Now, right around the 21st, let me just back this up, because we start to see this action down here, the 21st, start to blossom east of the Lesser Antilles, east of Barbados here. We're going to see this start to crop up. And this is where we'll start to see a potential tropical system spin up around the 22nd into the 23rd, coming right through the central Lesser Antilles, right into the eastern Caribbean. We could be looking at a tropical system. Now, what's going on up here with Erin? Let's just back this up a little bit. This run of the GFS still clipping eastern and southeastern Newfoundland here with a major, at this point, it looks like an extra tropical low, but still 950 millibars. That is intense. All attention at this point is going to turn on the 23rd to a potential tropical system. And this run of the GFS brings it right into the Caribbean through Dominican Republic and Haiti, Puerto Rico. These areas, very heavy rain moving through. And if we just follow the intertropical convergence zone back to the east here, you can see we have another major wave coming off the area southeast of the Cape Verde Islands here. So definitely a major uptick in tropical activity. All eyes are going to be on this system because the GFS is showing this a little bit weaker and further south, which would be more implications for Jamaica, Dominican Republic, Haiti, Puerto Rico, Lesser Antilles. Now, it does have it crossing Cuba on the 25th. Don't get into exact points and tracks at this point. The margin of error is huge, but this run of the GFS taking it right across South Florida, the Florida Keys, strengthening it into a hurricane in the Gulf, Eastern Gulf here, from Tampa down to Miami, the Keys, Key West here, heavy rain, gusty winds, and look at this, really developing into a hurricane right into the Gulf here. So that is a big concern as we stretch through August 27th into the 28th here. Could we be looking at the potential for a landfalling hurricane somewhere along the Gulf Coast? Here's the 28th. This run brings it right in just east of New Orleans, around Mississippi, Alabama, panhandle of Florida. We'll keep an eye on it here because trends have been further south and west with this system. Behind it, we're looking at the intertropical convergence zone, the Caribbean here. Not looking at too much other than that, but we'll keep an eye because indications have been showing that the Caribbean and Gulf, we're going to start to see an uptick in tropical moisture and wave action. Now, as we head through the 29th, I want to draw your attention to Africa here because this is going to set us up for the first week of September. Look at all of these tropical waves just lining up over Central Africa. It's a crazy amount. All right, so we take a look at the European model here with Hurricane Erin and what's going to be our next potential system we're going to look at here. Thanks to Tropical Tidbits here for our European model analysis. You can see Erin is going to continue to strengthen over the next couple days back to Category 4. You can also see our next couple systems here lining up. So as we head through Tuesday, August 19th here, I wouldn't be surprised if we get another named storm out here this week. Look at this. European model taking Erin pretty close here to the US East Coast. Thankfully, at this point, it looks like it's going to stay mostly out to sea. But you will see some wind and wave impacts, rip currents along the East Coast. Look at that. And it is going to pass between the East Coast, North Carolina, and Bermuda here. So look at our next system blossoming nicely here Friday. So it's going to, here on the European model, is taking a similar track to Erin, but it will be following in the wake, at least on this European run, to those cooler upwelled waters behind Erin. So that may help keep this a little weaker. Also, continuing to watch the intertropical convergence zone. You look, the Gulf and the Caribbean, though, look pretty quiet, but I caution you, the previous European model runs had this storm deeper into the Caribbean here and into the Gulf. So this is something we have to keep an eye on. European going with 2 subtropical highs here east of the Azores and another one off the Canadian Maritimes. Now, how close does Erin come here? I'm going to back this up to next Saturday to Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. It does safely pass off to the southeast, although brushing parts of eastern Newfoundland here. So that's something we'll have to keep an eye on. European taking the next potential hurricane pretty close to eastern New England here through August 27th. So that's a development we'll have to keep an eye on here. Also watching several more very strong tropical waves lining up here. One thing to note, European model this far out, take it with a grain of salt, is showing a landfalling hurricane along Nova Scotia here. So that is a potential development as this high pressure retreats into the North Atlantic. We'll have to keep an eye on it here. As we go through the end of the month, here's the 30th into the 31st. Look at the intertropical convergence zone out here, looking extremely active. So as we go into the 1st of September, we're going to be looking at extreme storm action, also watching a tropical wave lining up here into the western and northwestern Caribbean. So zooming into the Caribbean and the Gulf, Central America areas here, Lesser Antilles. Let's just back this up. So there is our hurricane moving away from the Caribbean islands. We're still going to get those outer feeder bands throughout the rest of Sunday into Monday here, along especially Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, northwestern Virgin Islands here into Dominican Republic and Haiti. Turks and Caicos, this is going to come pretty close to you as well. Would not be surprised if you see some big gusty showers, thunder showers here as this winds up. Now, the next wave coming on the screen here, this is our potential next tropical storm. Here it is on this European run following in the footsteps here of Erin. So we'll have to keep an eye on this. It does keep it weaker and more towards the north here in time. You can see all this moisture sitting around the Gulf and off the East Coast, but very dry here into the northwestern Caribbean. That's something we'll have to keep an eye on. But I do think in time, as we head through the end of the month, here's the 29th into the 30th, you start to see more activity here. Here's a tropical wave just south of Jamaica and the Cayman Islands. Also, another one moving through the Lesser Antilles here. So that is what we'll have to be keeping an eye on as we go through the end of the month into the 1st of September. Intensity forecast for Hurricane Erin. You can see we're going to bounce between Category 3 and Category 4 over the next several days. And then finally, as we get through the next week or so, as it recurves, we're going to see this bounce back to a Category 2. Sea surface temperature analysis. Erin is going to be heading into some extremely high sea surface content water. Look at the Gulf. Much of the Caribbean as well is really warming up even east of the Lesser Antilles towards the Western MDR. Western Caribbean here, yeah, the European model bringing our hurricane to the north. So we'll see additional rainfall. Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico especially, another couple inches here, probably 2 to 3 inches on those southern feeder bands. Look at Jamaica, though, and Cayman Islands. We start out dry through the middle week, maybe a few showers in Jamaica. But as we head through the end of the month here, we're going to start to see moisture increasing. Belize here, upwards of 100, 150 millimeters. Honduras as well. Jamaica, eking out about 50 to 75 millimeters on average. Dominican Republic, a little bit less here with the exception for west central portions. Puerto Rico, yeah, that's where you're going to see those 3 to 4 inch rainfall amounts all the way up through the Bahamas. You'll see those 60 to 100 millimeters. And here on our GFS run for the Western Caribbean, Central America, these areas, yeah, a pretty dry week. Jamaica, you may pick up 20 to 40 millimeters here. Cancun, almost nothing. Cayman Islands, pretty much the same here. But watch out, next weekend into the last week of August, that tropical wave that could become our next named tropical storm heading across Jamaica, some areas upwards of 100 to 200 millimeters, especially in the eastern part of Jamaica here, Cayman Islands as well. Look at Dominican Republic. Some areas close to 250 to 300 millimeters with 3 to 4 inches across parts of Puerto Rico. And looking into the Eastern Caribbean here, there is our big hurricane, Hurricane Erin. That's trending towards the northeast, thankfully. And here is Friday, August 22nd, our next big tropical wave activity. This is what could become our next tropical storm or even hurricane, following a similar path on the European model to Erin. We'll keep an eye on it here because I think that's still up in the air, especially since the storm hasn't initialized. But that would mean more heavier rains for the Northeast Caribbean islands. Adding insult to injury here, another 60 to over 120 millimeters, maybe some areas upwards of 150 millimeters. Trinidad, Tobago down here, you're looking anywhere from about 20 to 50, maybe 60 millimeters up the Lesser Antilles island chain here. And heading on into the Eastern Caribbean, those southern feeder bands on the southern portion of Hurricane Erin will likely continue to impact you from Puerto Rico, the Northwestern Virgin Islands, Dominican Republic, Haiti, and the Turks and Caicos here, with additional rainfall amounts expected around 50 to 100 millimeters. Now, our next tropical wave moving through the Lesser Antilles Friday and Saturday this coming week, and through Dominican Republic later next weekend, and Puerto Rico as well into that last week of August. All eyes are going to be on this for some potential very heavy rain here. Even to Trinidad, Tobago areas down here, depending on where you are, could set up close to 100 millimeters. Look it up here, though. Parts of the Lesser Antilles upwards of 200 millimeters with this tropical wave potentially becoming a tropical storm all the way back through Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. All right, for the Western Pacific here, yeah, it's unusually dry here. South Korea, Seoul, all the way over to Japan. Look at how crazy there is practically no tropical moisture until you get into Seoul. A little bit later, Monday into Tuesday, you see some of these showers and thunder showers. There actually is no typhoon activity much this week. We do have a few waves we'll be watching across the northern Philippines and in the intertropical convergence zone here. Heavier rain towards Hong Kong as well. We'll see a little bit of a synoptic low spin up across the southern Japanese islands. But for the most part, look how dry it is throughout much of South Korea, eastern China, all the way through the Japanese, at least the central and northern Japanese islands through this time period as we head mid to late week. You can see just some synoptic rains moving to the north here. Seoul, look at South Korean peninsula remaining very dry over to Japan, except the southern Japanese and the northern Japanese islands getting some rain. Now, this is where things get interesting on the 23rd into the 24th. GFS is picking up on a potential typhoon here. hitting the northern Philippines. And we're watching the intertropical convergence zone for more activity as we head through the 23rd into the 24th. We'll be watching it closely. Japan does start to get into some wet weather here the 24th into the 25th. But yeah, all eyes are going to be on the Philippines, Taiwan, South China here, northern Vietnam for the potential of a potential later August typhoon here. So we'll keep an eye on it. Very quiet, although, with the exception for that potential typhoon throughout the rest of the Western Pacific here through the 29th. And looking at the Western Pacific here, yeah, this is kind of interesting. We're watching some tropical moisture move through the southern parts of the Japanese islands over the next week, South China as well. Philippines, you get that proverbial moisture kicking in here. So we'll watch it here. Things are looking pretty interesting as we go throughout time. Look at here, Seoul, South Korea, 165 millimeters. Northern Japan, upwards of 350 millimeters. Southern Japanese islands, 200 to 300 millimeters. So watch out. Philippines also getting 200 to 300 millimeters. So as we head through the rest of your Sunday evening here, you can see some showers and thunder showers moving through parts of eastern Pennsylvania, Maryland, northern Delaware here, New Jersey, parts of downstate New York, Hudson Valley as well. So watch out for some gully washers here in eastern New England, here in Connecticut, all the way down through Richmond, Virginia here as we stretch through midnight tonight. So look at that. It's going to be stretching off the coastline here, maybe a few showers as well. Parts of Florida. Here we got some mesoscale convective systems up here. And as we get into the heating tomorrow through 7 p.m., you can see some gully washers popping up through parts of Florida here. That's some great news. Some beneficial rains for your areas. Also, some pop-up showers and thunderstorms interior parts of North Carolina and Virginia. Maybe a few showers up through Harrisburg here, but for the most part, it will be dry throughout the Northeast and Ohio River Valley here into the eastern Great Lakes. So the rest of your Sunday evening, watch out. There is a marginal risk here throughout parts of eastern, southeastern Pennsylvania, Maryland, northeastern Virginia, all the way up through southeastern and southern New England. So watch out, plains as well. As we continue on into Monday, look at your severe threat. Marginal risk also out here into the plains, clearing into the northeast. And as we head throughout Tuesday, that marginal risk expands into parts of Wisconsin and western Michigan. And Joe Drehos from the Johnson City, New York area, sharing a beautiful sunset from this past Tuesday. You can see off in the distance that beautiful orangish glow. That is really nice. Look at that. Very peaceful to be had here across the Johnson City, New York area. Nice captures there, Joe Drehos. Picking up where our feature radar left off here. As we continue throughout the week, you can see picking up right around Tuesday, the 19th. All eyes are going to be on a few things here. We got some mesoscale convective activity across southern Ontario. That may try to get into upstate New York, maybe northern Pennsylvania. All eyes are going to be on Erin here. See how close this actually gets to the US East Coast. You can see it just off the coastline here. It's going to be a close call, but a lot of wave rip action. Riptides, yeah, outer bands could reach the Outer Banks here. So we'll keep an eye on it. This is a very large storm. By this point, it'll be a Category 3 down to potentially a Category 2 here offshore. So still a very strong storm. The pressure gradient is going to be great. So you're going to see those stiff, very stiff northeast winds with water piling up into the coastline here as well. So that heading out over to the Atlantic. Now, as we get into later week, the 22nd into the 23rd, we start to see tropical moisture trying to surge behind it through the Carolinas down through Louisiana and Florida here. That's going to surge northward here. Also some mesoscale convective complexes here. Mesoscale convective systems moving through parts of the Northeast, that heading off the coastline. This, unfortunately, next weekend into the last week of August, you can see all eyes are going to turn our attention here because they're looking pretty quiet with the exception for this potential tropical system crossing the Florida Keys into South Florida. We'll have to keep an eye on this because trends have been showing a hurricane in the Gulf. Could this actually make it as a major hurricane in the north central Gulf? Now, margin of error is very great this far out. You could be looking at either side of this potential cone of uncertainty, but I'll keep you posted here because we may be looking at the potential for a tropical system in the Gulf. And if that were to happen, sea surface temperatures are running extremely warm. Also, look at this right around the 29th. mesoscale convective complexes, parts of Ohio and western Pennsylvania. We'll have to keep an eye on it here. And for our European model, picking up where our future radar left off, obviously all eyes are going to be on our potential hurricane here. Obviously, Hurricane Erin back to being a Category 4. So as we head through the midpoint of the week, you can see some showers and thunderstorms hanging out across the northeast. Also a mesoscale convective complex here across parts of the upper Mississippi and Ohio River valleys. This run of the European model taking it pretty close here to the coastline. As we head through time, you can see this heading back out to sea. So very similar to the 0Z run that we had as well. But you see these showers and thunderstorms just continuing across the southeast as we head through the 23rd into the 24th. You see that tropical moisture getting all the way up into parts of the interior northeast, eastern Great Lakes region, all the way through the 25th into the 26th. Our next potential storm, yeah, heading out a little bit east of here on the Euro, way further north and east than the GFS. But here we go. As we stretch through the 28th, very similar to the GFS, we have some mesoscale convective systems moving through parts of the Ohio Valley into the mid-Atlantic and northeast. And for the European model here for precipitation, look at this. So we head through the mid part of the week. There's actually not a lot to talk about here other than our hurricane. That's pretty much staying off the coast. Even the Euro taking it east of North Carolina. You can see our rainfall amounts here. As we continue through time, though, look at that. Next weekend, we do see a surge. Let's get that out of the way. A surge in tropical moisture. We'll have to watch this from the eastern Gulf up into the southeast states, even up in here into the northeast as well. As we head through the end of the month, all the way through September 1st. Look at this. Yeah, this is a bit crazy if you think about it. Some of these areas in the interior Carolinas getting upwards of 5 inches. And yeah, Florida, 2 to 3 inches. That's some beneficial rain for you, interior northeast. We'll watch out for those heavier rainfall amounts. And looking at the GFS run here for precipitation amounts. Yeah, there's Erin, a near miss of the US East Coast. As we continue through the end of the month, you can see, yeah, there's GFS is really showing, you know, the potential for a hurricane setting up here across the Gulf, eastern Gulf, into parts of the southeast. So watching out for that. Also from the Midwest here, heavier rainfall amounts up to 4-6 inches. And here into the interior parts of the northeast, some areas getting upwards of 1 inch or 2. But watch out. If we do have a landfalling hurricane, we could be looking at 10 to 15 inch amounts easily. And before we continue with more weather coverage here, don't forget, if you made it this far in the video and you like it, smash that like button, everyone. It really does help. Question or comment down below. I really do love to respond and read all your questions or comments. Subscribe if you haven't already. Bell notification button. All my future weather updates will be at your fingertips. And don't forget, if you haven't watched my Hurricane 2025 complete season outlook, it's a link at the end of this video and a description down below. Let's continue with more weather coverage. And our upper air pattern here. So we got that ridge across eastern North America. It's breaking down here into the southeast. Hurricane here on our latest run coming kind of close to North America. Thankfully, it's passing, looks to be pretty safely between the east coast to the US and Bermuda, although it's starting to look like it could clip parts of Nova Scotia and Newfoundland here. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But here we go. Trough kicking in here Monday, August 25th. So we'll have to keep an eye on it. European is now capturing the second hurricane close to the New England coast. So we'll have to keep an eye on it. It all depends on the timing of this late month trough that kind of just hangs out along the east coast here. Cooler temperatures are on the way. NAO index is going extremely negative here. Look at this. Later part of August, a lot of blocking. We got to watch out, especially for that hurricane path activity. And here we go with your MJO index. This is actually negating the NAO index because we start in a quiet between 2 and 3. And look at this. We go 3, 4, and 5 later into August into early September. So that would suggest quieter times are ahead in eastern North America and the western Atlantic. So if you're a Canadian weather outlook here, we're starting to see this big old mess move into Ontario as we head through Monday into Tuesday. Another Pacific system. All eyes are going to be on our potential, Hurricane Erin here. See how close this gets to Nova Scotia, Newfoundland here. This run of the GFS has a little bit of the outer bands reaching eastern Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island into eastern Newfoundland here. Eastern Newfoundland, St. John's area especially, so watch out. It could wobble northwest. Another system diving south and east here as we head through the 22nd and 23rd throughout Ontario and Quebec. We'll be watching for some stronger thunderstorms across southern Ontario and Quebec here. Watch out, Montreal, Quebec City, Ottawa. These areas could see some heavier rain as well. High pressure building in behind it for the prairies as we head through the 24th and 25th. This is some really great news up here in the wildfire situation, Alberta, especially with this heavier rain developing as this Pacific moist flow comes up and over the Rocky Mountains here. That is going to be some welcome rain. Another one moving through Alberta here the 27th. Ontario and Quebec, watch out. Wetter times are ahead, so we'll be watching out for that. The last frame shows more rain for New Brunswick and Nova Scotia with clearing behind it for central and western Canada. So for our Canadian rainfall amounts, what are we looking at here? So it's dry initially, except for the central prairies here. And then as we get through the end of the month, you can see we're going to see more tropical moisture. Less on the west coast here. You see things calming down. The good news is look at Alberta here through the wildfires. That is some great news. We're seeing those rainfall amounts closer to 60 to 100 millimeters. Very great news. 40 to 60 throughout much of eastern Canada until you get to the Canadian Maritimes. This is with some tropical moisture that will be feeding north. I think there's going to be a lot of recurving hurricanes here, so watch out. Some areas could get upwards of 150 to 200 millimeters. And as we take a look at your Monday, August 18th for temperatures, look at that. 70s. That is beautiful. This is terrible down here. Hundreds and upper 90s. Watch as we go throughout the week, though. Here's Tuesday. Wow, look at that. Some 70s here in the Appalachians and some 80s, 70s up here in parts of the Northeast into the upper Midwest. And as we continue to stretch throughout Wednesday here, I got to say, this is a lot nicer. This we can deal with through Thursday. Look at this. We start to lose the grip of that heat wave. Look at that. That is beautiful. That is nice. As we head into Friday, August 22nd, this is what you should see for later in summer. You know, some low 80s here. That is still very nice. Even interior Carolinas here, some lower 80s. That is really beautiful. And to Saturday, next Saturday, you can't really complain too much. It is creeping up here into the upper 80s into parts of the Ohio Valley. But look what's waiting up here. Some low 70s. Send a forecast from hometown viewers. Bring it to Scranton, Susquehanna, River Valley, New York, and Pennsylvania. We look through the week here. This is a lot better. Sunny Monday, Tuesday, a chance of showers into Wednesday. Thursday and Friday looking nice. We start out in the upper 70s and we end in the low to mid 80s. Beautiful week. Enjoy. Plenty more weather to come. Here is a look at my affiliate. Check out these awesome, amazing maps. I am proud to announce that I am now an affiliate with Trilogy Maps. TrilogyMaps.com, bringing you the most digital, customizable maps found nowhere else on the internet. These maps are simply stunning. It's an advanced layering system that makes these maps great for making forecast maps with ease or any other maps that you would like to display important information on. The resolution on these maps is simply amazing. From the detail of everything here in the States, and you can also create stunning, digital, professional layered maps from also across the entire world. And don't forget, in checkout, the discount code option, use my code, MeteoMark, hit apply, and you will get 20% off your order. So if you want the most professional, customizable, and affordable weather maps found nowhere else on the internet, look no further than TrilogyMaps.com. Link in the description down below along with your discount code. As always, thank you for joining me for this edition of MeteoMark's Weather. Also, don't forget to join me on Facebook at MeteoMark, also Weather Northeastern, also Twitter at Weather Eastern. Don't forget it's MeteoMark.com, and don't forget, if you want to send me a coffee, there is a link, Super Thanks. You can smash that Super Thanks button or my PayPal link in the description down below. You can buy me a cup of coffee. Thanks everyone. Share that video, subscribe if you haven't, smash that like button.